That's no moon. It's a space station.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Just a quick reminder that tickets are on sale for our Hawaii conference/retreat next year, April 2026, April 20th through the 24th on the Big Island. It is our first time breaking away from Grafton. We had 4 great years in Grafton, but we are taking it overseas and we can't wait to uh, swim with the dolphins, visit some sacred sites over there, and Hawaii is very activating. So, if you're interested in joining us, journeytotruth.online is where you can find those tickets and all the other information. And we will be announcing the lineup very shortly. So, we hope to see you all there. And today's guest is Morgan Johnson. So, I discovered her book randomly on Amazon. It was a recommended book. I didn't know who she was, and I bought it. And then after I bought the book, I researched her and saw that she had been interviewed by Dr. Sala, and she had this incredible testimony. I was just, the book, I was guided to buy the book. So I did. And I recently started reading it, and I have so many questions. He has an incredible story, but I'm going to briefly read through her bio just to give you guys an idea of who she is and what this is going to be about today. Morgan Johnson's memoir, Manipulated Memories, is the first book in a three-part series that recounts her involvement with the CIA's MK Ultra programs, as well as her experiences with the Army and Space Force. And from my understanding, she was actually she joined the military, joined the Army, and it was from the Army where she was recruited into these programs, and we'll get into that a little later. She was trained as a spy as a child and then used for nefarious reasons during her time in space. When she left the military, she was discredited and mentally attacked to keep silent. Those days are over, and she stands with the many who have experienced similar stories. Now she works as an empowerment coach, helping others to find the strength they need to traverse this multidimensional world. And it's very multidimensional as we're discovering more and more every day. So, welcome to the show, Morgan. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm excited to
Have
have
you?
you here. And I know so parts of this story are kind of dark, unfortunately, but as they all are whenever, people are brought into these programs. So I don't want to focus too much on the details of the dark aspect. We've covered a lot of that, but we will definitely not shy away from it because I know that is part of the story. But this all started when you were very young. And you were basically, I guess 2 military men came into your school and pulled you out of class. Is that where this all starts for you?
Yes, I was 5 years old. They came in and took some blood from my finger and on using like a handheld machine. And that machine said that I was O negative and had the number 117 on it. And they asked me if I would like to go meet some more kids just like me. I was taken from my school to a car, and that car drove us to what they called the Elitist Academy, which is a school for gifted kids that works with the government.
Okay, so that was in a nutshell. I'm just reading that part of the book. So this happened so you were kindergarten, I guess?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then you were brought in, they came to your school, they tested your blood, and then they brought you to this academy. What did that look like, and how did they do that without your parents knowing?
My parents, I mean, the theme of my life was neglect. I had very much been ignored and not worried about. My parents were divorced, and my I was with my mom at that time. And she had a boyfriend, and they were just busy being in their 20s, and they did not necessarily take care of their kids in a way that was healthy. And so they didn't really notice when I was gone. They didn't look into the things because as we talk through this, we'll talk more about me going to that place more often. It was probably I like to guesstimate maybe like once a month, once every few months. It wasn't all the time, but it was just to do checkups or to do testing and things like that. But my parents just didn't notice and didn't care, honestly. They were busy with their own lives.
Right, which is a common theme. It seems they take children from broken homes or situations like yours, and
Part of the profiling, because
right,
it's like the less eyes on, the better kind of thing. The less people, they're like, oh, we can actually get away with this person kind of thing. Yeah, I
right,
noticed that.
right. If the parents aren't somehow involved either,
Right.
which
Which
is
is
the case
sad, which is
sometimes,
really
yeah.
sad, but that's yeah.
So you weren't actually going to this elitist academy every day. It was only
No,
occasionally.
no. It was just occasionally, just for there'd be different types of testings that would happen. They would teach us different things, energy work, magic, hand-to-hand combat kind of stuff. I got into gymnastics really young at like 9 years old, so that was a big part. There were different mind control methods, such as like electroshock therapy. They were it was like writing code for a computer. So they wanted to see, like, the entire thing was its own experiment of like, how much can we get this person to do without being so hands on? So the goal wasn't to be with us all the time. It was to do small things and get us to live a certain way or do certain things that would benefit them or the mind control project itself. They kind of were just poking around in the mind, seeing what they could get away with.
Wow. Okay, so then when you went, you would go to school, and then they would come take you from school. What did that look like?
A car would be parked out front. They would call me into the office. They would tell the instructor or principal, whoever was there, because I went to an alternative school. I was really against school, and so I ran away all the time. I skipped class. I was not um, available for school. I didn't want to be there. So they would tell the teachers or whoever they were coming in to see not to mark me as absent. And of course, because they were in suits, they had badges, they listened. So just to keep it so it didn't look too bad, as in me being with truancy and stuff.
Right. So did they ever, which is interesting, of course, the teacher would comply if two
Yeah.
military men walked in and said, "Don't mark her as absent." So when you were brought back at the end of the day, were you ever mind wiped, or were you given a false set of memories to go home with?
Both. It depending on the situation, depending on the day, especially when I started going more often. When I first go like, when they picked me up and then dropped me off at the school, there were there was like a nurse that would meet us at the door, and she would ask us questions about our home life and ask us, what happened last night? How do you feel today? And then they would put something in our hand underneath the skin, and that would be something that would control, in my opinion, maybe our vibration or where we were at or how we were going to feel for the rest of the day. And then when we were leaving, we definitely got mind wiped most of the time. But we did know enough to know where we were, and they did just pretty much beg us not to tell anyone.
Really? So the thing they were putting under your hand in the book, you described it, there's like 3 different colors, right? And then
Yeah,
depending on how you answered questions, it
right.
would so do you have any more insight on what that actually was?
No, and there's just there's too many questions. I have many questions about all of the things that were going on, but my best guess is just that one made a person more docile, one may relaxed a person, probably, especially if there was like trauma that went on at home. They wanted us to be in a very docile state so that we could be brainwashed, basically. So I have otherwise no idea.
Right, right. Okay, so this went on for a few years at school, and then at some time when you were older, you were actually they started bringing you to on mission, for lack of a better term. They started using you for missions. Did anything happen between then and when the mission started? I guess as a teenager.
Yeah, so the testing started at 8 years old. Testing would be trauma enforced. For them, they believed that trauma would make us stronger. So they started using different tactics. The first one at 8 years old was like, I don't know the name of what that machine was, but they dunked us underwater, dunked our heads underwater for 5 seconds at a time. Um, and it's really the same contraptions that they use for torturing enemies, right? Or getting information. It was that kind of thing. Or they would have us stand in the corner with like meat next to us with a lion that could barely almost get to us. And they'd use these as well, challenges, right? And so they made it seem like it was a good thing and that we were getting stronger and they were helping us become superheroes and we were these tough kids. But really, it was just trauma and torture. But those events did make us closer together, it did make us stronger. The missions we started to go on aren't there isn't a lot in that first book. It's going to be more into the second book when my second personality comes out. And there was a lot that torture that they were doing for us was creating a split in consciousness. The mind, it protects itself. And so it has to be able to stay alive and act normal. And the only way for it to do that when it's being tortured so badly is to separate consciousness.
Right.
So it split me into that super soldier alter identity.
Right. So when they were doing this dunking your head underwater and the lion and stuff, was
Yeah.
that done under, do you remember where you were taken to do that?
Yeah, most of our places, the Elitist Academy, so I don't have an exact city, but it was a Victorian style building and it was about 2.5 hours north of Portland, Oregon. That's usually where my parents were staying, in between Portland and like Kelso, Washington. So it was always, in my opinion, it is really close to Fort Lewis. And because I know that we did train at Fort Lewis a few times for like the remote viewing projects. So I was also doing remote viewing at the time, which was looking for targets that were out of reach for soldiers on the ground. So in caves and also timelines that weren't now. So past, present, and future were all available. Let's say they were looking for a criminal that they couldn't find. They'd get a bunch of kids together and ask them to look for them.
Yeah, and I did find that interesting in your book. You mentioned that there was a protocol, obviously, when you were looking for someone, but then you would, at the end of the protocol, you would say, "Show me where this person is located in this timeline." So
Yeah.
that's something very real.
Yeah.
You don't want to locate someone in the wrong timeline and give them bad data,
Right.
which is very telling because that tells you that the elite or the private sector has a understanding of this.
Oh, yes.
Common knowledge in their
Common
circle.
knowledge. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Oh,
we're
yeah.
still, we're just trying to figure this out on our own, piecing everything together. But
Yes.
you mentioned that you got on an elevator to go down to this area, and they pressed a button that said T on it. Am I mistaken?
Well, the T was when we went to Houston to go to, it was the top floor of the science building. And that's where they introduced us to the Looking Glass, Project Looking Glass, which was seeing our future. And
Okay.
that's when I was 15.
Okay, yeah, because I actually have questions about that. So I just got that part
Yes.
confused. So let's
Yes.
rewind a little bit. I know part of the testing they brought you in to, I guess, as an intuitive empath to detect deception. They had
Yes.
you. They gave you a list of questions, and you questioned this man, and you were basically marking off whether he was telling the truth or lying. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, so this was a criminal that that was working or had some sort of side contract with the CIA. And then he had told someone about his involvement with them. And they were using me just to see if I could predict that, if I could know that he was lying. They wanted to use me for other different projects and different things. There's an Illuminati association that comes into this later. They wanted to see how strong of an empath I was. They already knew the answer, and so this was just their way of like seeing my value towards becoming a member of that Young Illuminati Association and other work that I would be doing with them.
Okay. Yeah, so that's fascinating. Everything's a test. It's like
Everything is a
everything's a
test.
test,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And they rely on, I guess, a fractured mind or like a broken home and somebody who is wounded, is trauma. Like like they created a trauma bond with even the other kids, right? So you guys
Yeah.
would all like, um, it would just like inspire each other in a way. Like you guys kept each other going. That's the way I see it. Um, so it's always a test, yeah. And then, okay, so at some point you were a teenager and you were actually being taken from home to go on. I remember you said that an SUV would literally pull up to your house and you would leave.
Yes.
Can you tell that story?
Yeah. So that's the story that we were talking about with the scientists. And that was, but first, so they, my personality split. Like they have the thing with the personality split is that they had a code for it. So they had a certain phrase that they would say. And so I had just gotten a phone. It was like the first, I think it was like 15. Um, and they had called me over the phone, said the certain sentence. I separated into the other consciousness, told my dad that I was leaving for the weekend with some friends. He didn't care, and then left. And they had picked me up in an SUV. We went to a private jet. Uh, we went straight to a another airline, obviously, a hangar of some kind in Texas, and it was right around the Houston area. Then they took us to an underground bunker types. Like it was this, I want to say, is this what it was my lab? That's right. So it was my lab, which was a testing grounds for new technologies. This is where they work with ETs. They have and use their technology to create their own. So I got introduced to 5 of the beings that they were working with. And at the time, like one was a draconian. I actually met that draconian there. I don't know, you haven't probably got that far into
No,
the book.
no, I have actually.
Oh, you have?
That was going to be one of my questions because you talk about some of the extraterrestrials were you met in hologram form,
Yes.
and
This
then
is what I'm talking about. Yeah.
and then after that you met a physical Draco.
Yes.
And this is all in real time. This was obviously they switched your altar, but
Yes.
it wasn't like you were in a program yet, off planet or something. It was
No,
like
I wasn't on
yeah.
purpose. Yes.
Okay, so
It
tell
was in
rewind a little bit and tell us about the hologram meeting the hologram extraterrestrials, what that was like, and then introducing you to the Draco.
Yeah, so when we landed, a bunch of military on the private jet, when we landed, some military men came and got us, took us to just a small little building that had a elevator that went underground. And so it was an underground like base, an entire huge base. Then they took us to a room in that base where on the ground was like 5 mat discs, and then they had a remote and they turned on these holographic images of 5 different species that they were working with. Excuse me. And they just wanted us to to become comfortable seeing different beings, because in our remote viewing, we already were going to be, or at least soon, we're going to be introduced to these beings, and they didn't want us to like freak out or not know what it was. They had their own purposes, so they came up with their own agenda too, right? Like so each species that came up, they gave us a whole backstory. They also split the hologram into 2, and we got to see like the organs and the way that they breathed and like what their anatomy was like compared to ours. And a lot of them were very similar to ours because they're all humanoid beings, that at least that they showed us at that time. And then once we were done being like, briefed about who these beings were, we were told we were going to go meet one of the Draconians. And it was the most terrifying experience of my life. Um, there was, he was sitting on what looked like a throne. There's some big ego going on there. These are like the highest ranking military men in the country are working in this underground bunker, and they have this one giant draconian that had wings. He looked like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Jupiter Ascending.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
That's exactly what they look like, the ones that have wings. Um, I mean, very similar to that. They're a lighter color and they had a little bit of an iridescent shine to them, but it was very, very similar. There's some movies out there that just blow my mind with like how similar
Yeah.
and I think they're trying to tell us through movies, but
There's
I
some
digress.
intense disclosure in that movie.
Yeah,
Right.
100%.
I've never seen more Draco disclosure than that movie, I don't think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Side note, I just saw on Prime, there's a documentary called Reptilians, and it's all about reptilians, like, and running the world.
Really?
It's like literally,
Interesting.
I haven't seen it yet, but I've been seeing people share it on X, and I put it as a save to watch because I'm just curious of what they're saying.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's the one thing about my story and about who I am. I don't watch other people's stuff. I haven't. It took me about 7 years to write this book because I only didn't want my story to get influenced by anyone else's. So I'm just now that the story is out, like being open to other people's perspectives and storylines. But I was very protective of my memories for a long time.
right. Well, I don't believe I was guided to your book by accident. I found it very synchronistic, and then once I picked it up, and there was a lot of parallels to my experience and stuff, and we can talk about off camera. But I was you immediately get a feeling reading somebody's story, like, oh, this is real.
Yeah.
Like you actually this I don't know how to describe it other than I just feel that this is a legitimate story as opposed to some people like grabbing onto memories through hypnosis sessions and stuff. It's a little
Sure.
different. Are you gonna
Yeah.
say something, Aaron?
I just want to say real quick, I'm glad you said that because I see a lot of people, a lot of the skeptics or people that just like, this is just too far out there for them and they just don't want to believe it or it's too far out of their paradigm. They tend to grab onto the easy explanation of all these people like yourself coming out with these stories. It's like, oh, you're all just regurgitating Corey Good or Tony Moderick or Randy Kramer, somebody that's been around longer that, oh, you just like listen to theirs. And then some of them even admit, they're like, oh, well, maybe through listening to these other people, they like got these false memories. Like they think this is real, but it's kind of, you're just kind of like subconsciously picking up. Um, and if you actually do your research on this topic, you'll come to the conclusion that that's not true because there's just way too much that I feel like people can prove to themselves that this is real. But it's easy to just like something that seems too far out of your paradigm to just be like, oh, that's just people listening to other people's stories and then either knowingly copying and plagiarizing it or unknowingly doing it, or they just watch too much sci-fi or, and then they're just like, but it's funny because when you do your research, you realize all the sci-fi stuff out there is disclosure. It's not the other way around. It's like, oh, you watched too much sci-fi and now you're regurgitating that. It's like, no, the sci-fi itself is disclosing the same thing these people like yourself
We're
have
talking about right.
experienced firsthand. And there's ton of evidence pointing to that as well. And why do you think, real quick, why do you think that is that they put out so much disclosure in movies and shows and things? I know what I believe, but why
Well,
do
I
you think?
believe they're trying to control the narrative.
Yeah.
I think that there's very few movies that are portraying ETs or our lives outside of this in a good light. Um, that would be my goal is, I have written a screenplay for this book and I want people to look at the life outside of here as just as very similar to here, right? There's different types of beings. There's good ones. There's not good ones. There's more of a neutrality that exists out there that everybody's trying to survive and keep each other alive and be helpful. There's a loving nature to all of this. Like, it doesn't have to be us against them. And there is this, in Hollywood, this us against them that it really is being perpetuated. I really can't stand that narrative. That's
Right.
doesn't have to be the whole story.
And it's always, dystopian future, alien invasion, all that stuff.
Yes.
Obviously, it's programming, predictive programming.
Right. Right.
So going back to encountering this Draco, what happened after you
Yes.
met him?
So when I met him, he talked to me telepathically, and the only thing he said to me was, "You don't have to fear me today," which was just this ominous, mean-spirited, and it like sounded like a bunch of hissing noises in my head, and I was like paralyzed and couldn't move. It was absolutely terrifying. There I was with a couple boys, they loved him. I think they were enthralled with the idea of this powerful being. Boys are really into, like, dinosaurs, and so they were younger kids, so probably 10, 12 years old at that time. So they probably thought it was, like, the best day of their lives, but for me, it was very scary. I could feel the threat from him. He was, very intimidating. I mean, they eat people, they eat animals. There is something there to be, worried about. So when they enter right before they introduced us, they were like, yes, you do need to be careful and cautious if you ever meet one of these beings outside of here, but they won't hurt you here because you're with us."
Right.
So
So, okay, you meet him.
yes,
He says you don't have to worry about him or fear him today. Then where
yes.
did they bring you after that?
We went to a remote viewing room, which was literally like next door. And they brought all the kids in there. They were looking for a specific vehicle that had a satellite on it. It was like some rebellion against the CIA or against whatever it was that they were doing at the time. And they had us all remote view and look for that vehicle. So that's what we did.
So then you accomplished the mission, then they take you back home and ask.
No, we went to a hotel that night
Okay.
and stayed in Houston. And then the next day went to a building that looked like it was abandoned, but there were people inside. It had like a conveyor belt, like at a courthouse. And this was super secretive. This was where Project Looking Glass was being utilized, or a portion of it. So there's probably different modalities when we're talking Project Looking Glass to see which is um, the way that they see the future. And so they took us, me and the two boys that had come with us, took us up to the top floor of this science lab. And there was a ball of mercury that sat like 3 feet off the ground. And it was encased in like a clear encasement. And there was one chair sitting in front of it. And they made me sit in the chair first. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here
Okay.
for it. Yeah.
Okay. And there was like a mad scientist type guy. I named him Dr. Rupert, I think, in my screenplay, but I'm not 100% what his name was. But he put like dials on my forehead and on my fingertips, and strapped me to this chair. Everybody else went to the back of the room, and they turned on this ball, and this ball, it's so hard to explain. I mean, it's in the book. It's much easier to easily describe there, but a holographic type, I mean, the best HD you've ever seen screen ends up showing up around this ball, and it shows my memories from the future from my perspective. And so I was first at a rally or protest for disclosure at the White House, where there was tons of people and everybody was screaming, "We want disclosure." And so that there was some sort of movement I had been a part of And then it showed my trips in space. It showed like different ET beings that I had been working with in space. And it showed a court proceeding with like hundreds of people waiting outside. So those were the three things that they saw when they put me in the chair. And then they put the two boys in the chair, where they showed the MK Ultra stuff of them training to become killers. They were being messed with. They both went to Iraq during the war. And so they were both being messed with over there, brainwashed, that type of stuff. It showed different events, which is all in the book. I don't know, like getting into their lives isn't so necessary right at this point.
Right. Yeah, so I found it interesting in the book you talked about you seeing this disclosure protest and you were like, "What's disclosure?" You didn't even know at the
No, I
time.
was a kid.
That term. Yeah.
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 Disclose what?
Right,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I was 15 and I had no idea what I didn't know I'd go into the army. I didn't know that I would go to space or that any of this was going to happen. But once they figured that out, um, right after that, they took us home, but they brought me back first and put me and did some electroshock therapy where they were like writing code into my mind, where they'd shock me, say a sentence, shock me again, say a sentence, shock me again. And it was just little stuff to like make me scared of the world, tell me that no one, I couldn't trust anyone, tell me not to take care of myself, like those types of things, just so that I wouldn't become that person in the future that was willing to stand up and come out about disclosure.
Right, they wanted you
Right.
to cower in and yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Which is very disheartening, because I wonder I would imagine that happens to a number of us in different modalities probably, but, most people don't have memory of that actually happening to them. They just
Right.
they don't understand why they don't fit in or why they feel the way they do, and it's because they've been programmed quite literally to feel that way. And I think a lot of these towers that are up, I think they pump a frequency to keep people in that frequency, in that
And
programming.
satellites.
Yeah.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
know they do that.
Yeah,
For
absolutely. And just a quick side note, I just moved out of my hometown, St. Louis, Missouri, where sometimes I would spiral in my thoughts and I would run these programs. And as soon as I moved out of the state, I feel like I broke free from that. And I have been much better mental health and in a much better mental state. It was nothing that I let win, but it was always there and I always had to battle it. And I feel like it was just something running there, and getting out of my hometown was key to, I think, my whole journey. So that's just I feel like I was in some capacity that was happening to me. But
yeah.
okay, so you after this, you go through your teenage years and you're being pulled on these missions, and eventually you find yourself at an Illuminati party. Is that the
Yeah.
next part of this story?
Yeah, there was one Illuminati party that I put in the book. There is going to be multiple other ones once those memories start coming back. I don't have a lot of memory. I mean, remembering all of this stuff is like it's like data, right? And it's like my brain can only hold so much data at a time. There are limitations. So as some information comes up, more information comes up, like I have to be able to take it all on. So there is one Illuminati party that shows it was just when I was younger. They brought me in. It was like some initiation and to show me what I could have if I were to stay in their programming and to work with them, but it wasn't it was the PG part of the party. That was just the beginning few hours. They didn't I knew I could feel there was something wrong. It's something bad happening there, but there was definitely uh nothing really bad that they showed me.
Right. And this is whenever they dangled the carrot in front of you, they said you could have all this,
Yeah.
and they said 20 years in the blink of an eye, and you can have all this, and you didn't know what that meant at the time, but obviously a form of a 20 and back, what we hear about.
No, so that was separate. That
Okay.
was the 20 years was So me and my alter had got tired of the program. We didn't want to be there. We were done. We were, we felt like there was no emotion in the place that we were dealing with, that was like forced entertainment, and that these missions were shady. Like everybody else believed in what they were doing, and we had just become rebelling to rebel against it. I couldn't handle it. She couldn't handle it. So we wanted out. And the only way normally that you're going to get out is they have to kill you. So the Illuminati and the CIA put together a contract of 20 years of if that they would make it look like I was out, but I would still be on track for the mental manipulation and the mind control programming. I just wouldn't know that it was happening. So they wanted me to sign that contract, and they were saying, we'll give you 300 grand, which makes no sense because they were going to take my memories. So they weren't, they weren't ever going to give me any money, but they were saying, you could have all this if you just sign your life away to us for the next 20 years so that we can get all this data and information from the mind control stuff.
Oh, okay. So the way I interpreted that, when they said 20 years in the blink of an eye, I just thought they meant like a 20 and back. And then
Oh, yeah.
like you do a 20 and back for us, sign this contract, then you can have all this. Like that's the way I perceive that. So it's interesting to hear your take on that.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so did you sign that contract when they
I
gave it?
did.
And what did that look like?
So that looked like them removing all of my memories of the Elitist Academy, of the Illuminati Association, anything that had to do with the CIA. So they brought me into a room. They put me into this chair that had this like over thing that goes over your head like a hairdryer at a salon. And they picked through my memories and they deleted each one. I deleted isn't the right word. They suppressed, because obviously I got those memories back. So they just suppressed them into my subconscious mind, which is in the body. So I was able to retrieve those memories as I got older. But once that was done, they implanted other untrue memories into my mind and convinced me I was a drug addict. So I was 16 years old when I signed that contract, and when they picked me up, they suppressed the other memories. Then they put in that I was a drug addict. I woke up the next day like wanting a fix of hard drugs. Like I was no longer a part of that. Didn't remember anything that had happened, and I had become a regular teenager with a whole bunch of trauma.
Okay, wow. So that's about as far as I think I got in the book, maybe a little further. But at what point do you join the army, join the military?
I joined the army. I had just turned 18. There was a whole stint that I signed up at 16, was supposed to leave at 17. Something happened, and I had to wait till I was 18. Uh, but yeah, I went in. My birthday's in June. I went in November of 2003. So I was 18.
And then what did you actually do in the army?
I was a 25 Bravo, so I was an informations operator analyst, which is fancy for computer networking.
Do you think you were steered into the army?
Yes, I was 100%. I was forced by my mother, who I believe was paid by them. I don't know that she remembers that, but I do know that I believe that had something to do with it. Also, the recruiter came to my house unannounced when I had been at a party the whole night, and I didn't have any good reason to say no. So I felt very forced into it.
Right. Aaron, that reminds me of RGK's story. The recruiter kept coming to her house, and somehow her mom was in on it, like convincing her to
Yeah.
join the military.
Right.
And she didn't
Right.
want
Yeah.
to. She wanted to play
I
in a
didn't want
band.
to either.
Instead,
Yeah.
her mom was like kept pressuring her to join the
Yes.
military, and she's like,
Same.
"No, I don't want to."
As if the
Yeah.
recruiter had got to her mom
Right.
and
Yeah.
blackmailed her mom or something. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's
It was
interesting.
2003. We were in the middle of a war. I did not want to go to
Right.
the army.
Go
No
to
way.
Iraq. Go to or Afghanistan, Iraq.
Yeah.
Right.
That was not in my plans.
So how long? I mean, that might have been the plan all along too. Like,
Right.
but how long were you in the military, in the army before you were actually recruited for space program?
So it was 1 year. It was quite obvious now that I look back at it because I got originally when I went in, I went to Fort Jackson for basic training. I went to Fort Gordon for some AIT job school stuff. And then I had orders for Germany. I got ripped out of those orders, taken out, and then assigned to go back to Fort Lewis, which was quite, obvious to me now that they just wanted me closer to the projects. They wanted me in that area. Um, and then so within the first year, I was 19. It was right before I had a surgery. I was working for my first sergeant in his office and just getting him coffee, just doing paperwork. It was really quite lame. I really didn't like that job. I didn't really like being in the army, honestly. It, I'm a creative. I'm a sensitive and a creative, and I like to be creative. So there wasn't a lot of room for that there for me. But it's one day, my first sergeant said, we got some high ranking officials that want you to come meet with them. And it was a commander and two of his, I have no idea who they were, but the commander brought me into a room by myself. He told me, I have this opportunity for you. It's called a 20 and back. You could go to space. And I was excited. I mean, excited isn't even the word. It was like a dream come true. I was already upset that I had to come home, right? Because Fort Lewis was right around my house, and I wanted, if I was going to go in the army, I wanted to go somewhere else. I was really excited to go to Germany, and that just didn't happen. So then when he said you can go to space, I thought he was kidding, but it was a real thing. And I jumped at the chance. He did tell me you can't tell anyone, and nobody's gonna know that you ever went because we're gonna take your memories when you get back. I did not care. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted to go on an adventure.
Interesting. Yeah, at that point, after living a life like that, I mean, it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
just get me out of here, which
Yeah.
I think they rely on, and it's like
Yeah.
systematic, very systematic the way they do it. It's like a systematic breakdown of your psyche, and it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, get me out of here. Okay, so that was, I know that's an entirely different interview if we wanted, but just in a nutshell, like what happened? Do you remember? Did you sign a contract? Did you get put in a
Yeah.
chair? Like, what did the journey from Earth to space look like? Where did you go first, if you have that memory?
Yeah. I have lots of memory. I'm a lucky one that gets. I'm clairvoyant, so I get to, I guess, maneuver around in my subconscious mind. So I'm able to pull up memories. So I have a lot of memories. It was literally the next day. They came and I wasn't aware of it at the time because I wasn't allowed to tell anyone. But the boyfriend I had at the time was also being recruited. He was a super genius computer type, and so it was just appropriate for him to go. They picked us up. Just some random guy came up to me and said, "It's time to go." We went to, so Fort Lewis has, its neighbor is McCord Air Force Base. So it's literally within the same, it's right across the street, is what we call it. It's right down the street. And we went to an underground hangar in the McCord Air Force Base, and they told us we're going to the moon. And we took, I don't. There are some discrepancies in my memories when it comes to how long. I want to say it was 3 days, but it might not have been to get to the moon. And I only say that I probably said between 24 hours and 3 days, and to normally you can hyper jump to anywhere quickly, right? So the only reason that that would have happened was to acclimate us to space life, right? To get us used to being in a spaceship, to start us off softly instead of just throwing us into hyper jumping all over the galaxy. So first we went to the moon to get new uniforms, to get our assignments, to figure out what jobs we were going to do, and to really be acclimated into what was about to happen for the next 20 years.
Right. So you went to the moon in a craft, though.
Yes.
In this case, do you have any memory of that? Was it just a triangle craft, a dart, like what we hear
It
about?
looked like in between a fighter jet and a spaceship.
Kind of
So
like
it,
kind of like an F-117. Like that's
I haven't seen